they're the bits that you want to harvest. So when you've got like 2 or 3 of those on your plant, then you can start taking some off for the trestle. I'll leave it to them. But yeah, dig away. They're really nice. Taste the peas, but the nutrition value is
What is
massive.
this?
Pea shoots.
Pea shoots. Is that Turkish pea they just put in
Say that again, sorry.
Is that a Turkish pea that they put in the soil?
I think.
Chickpea.
No, this isn't chickpea.
Yeah, that's tastes
Oh,
green peas.
Yeah,
it
yeah.
tastes the peas, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And really good in stir fries. Again, it's just the nutrient value that's the benefit, I think. But
So, if you left that would become peas, would it?
yeah. So eventually it will start growing. Oh, there's a flower coming there.
Okay.
But yeah, it will grow flowers, and then those flowers will turn into pods, which will be your peas. And then if you want to eat them as peas, or you save them as your seeds, one or the other. So
It reminds me of being a kid when we used to be on the farm when they harvested the peas and the tractors used to go down, we used to pull handfuls off and shell the peas.
But yeah, so that's basically what you've just planted will
That
turn out
taste,
like.
that's took me right back there.
Yeah. So yeah,
Nice.
go down this way. Yeah, like it's weird to use it like it's you pick away at them all day. Not really, no, just a bit of decoration. But the problem with the tyres is you can't really grow. Well, we tried growing carrots in them, and you can taste the rubber. And
Really?
so we're sticking to just flowers now, really. So that way you're still getting the
I'm
use
just
of the
curious.
tyres. But
You know, why?
yeah, it's more a recycling thing, and I think they look quite
Oh, the tyres.
rustic. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because I heard that you're not meant to grow potatoes in them, are you?
No.
And most people wouldn't have heard, like, known that sort of thing. So
Yeah,
my friend
that's it.
actually wanted some tyres specifically so she could grow potatoes, and I'd say to her, no, I've heard, but I couldn't tell her where I'd
Yeah,
heard it from.
you
I
can just
heard
taste it.
somewhere.
I mean, when I tried the carrots, I couldn't put my finger on it at first, but then I was like, oh, that must be. It just tasted rubber, and it just didn't taste great. So now they're just decorative with flowers in, really. But yeah, this is the area we're going to look at. So this morning they did a patch over there somewhere, which got it done in 5 minutes. So basically what we're going to do, if everyone wants to get stuck in, is this has been done before, but it's been overgrown. So we're going to start kind of do another layer of the no dig method, really, which again is the lazy way, I think, but the more beneficial way. But basically it's just literally covering the ground in compost, so you're using, in cardboard, so you're using that as a weed suppressor, which is then going to break down and add to the soil later on. And then you just put in maybe 2, 3, 4 inches of compost on top, and then that's going to keep the existing weeds down. But you do have to be thorough in making sure there's no gaps in the cardboard, because otherwise, if there's a little bit of light, then it's all going to come shooting through again, and you end up with this. So it's literally a case of making sure that all the, because again, going back to leaching plastics and things like that, it's just making sure that all the sellotaping things off. And again, that's going to affect the root systems if it's kind of all entangled in the roots and things. So It's the only downside, I'd say, is standing here picking off the sellotape constantly. But I don't like Amazon, but they seem to have come out with a compostable tape, so they're doing something right.
Did you try the wood chip somewhere?
What's that,
Did
sorry?
you try the wood chip somewhere?
We did, yeah. All these pathways that are grass were wood chip, but keeping on top of it was so difficult.
Other again and again.
Yeah, and you've got to keep on top of it every time, and as you can see, it's now just grass. So keeping that grass away is not too easy, but again, I suppose if you had enough wood chip, it would be beneficial, I'd say.
You can have some carpentry workshop. Far.
Say that again?
You can have some carpentry workshop.
Yeah, or tree surgeons and things like that.
Yeah.
We did have someone that was bringing some down on a regular basis, but sorry, to get past the boring part in a sec. But effectively, all you're going to be doing is just laying it down and making sure there's no gaps. So should we break into two, and then some of us go and do the compost, and then some of us do this, and then we'll swap over? Yeah? No? Yeah? No? Can you see where these two paths are?
Yeah.
There, basically.
So you just need it on the middle strip?
along, yeah. We go for the blokes to do the graft. So we come over to the compost bit and we'll get some compost while. Yeah. And then I'll take you over there. Right, compost. Yeah, we go around the back there. So yeah, we are trying to make as much compost as we can, but it's a big plot to cover, so it's a case of buying, selling and using what we can really, but this is the first stage in this bucket area, whatever you call it, but we've got some horse manure in there, some straw, all the garden waste and pruning and stuff, cardboard, paper, but the main thing you're trying to watch for is a balance between what they call nitrogen and carbon materials. So carbon is basically anything that's dead really, so cardboard, paper, straw, dead leaves, things like that. So that's your carbon, and then the nitrogen is all your green waste, grass clippings, manure, and basically you want to have the right ratio. I think it's 60% carbon to 40% nitrogen, I believe. But then that's going to heat up and break down.
Is there any no-nos with the compost?
Is that, sorry?
Any no-nos?
Um,
I know
Citrus. I
Yeah, I have heard citrus, yeah.
All the citrusy
And
stuff.
I know when I was looking
Onions
into
I've
doing
heard
a
as well.
wormery, obviously to make a happy environment, there are
Yeah.
certain things that you should and
Yeah, yeah.
shouldn't.
Apparently meat isn't good for a start because that takes years to break down really on a...
And I
Yeah,
suppose
bones and-
you then get bacteria as well, don't you?
I'm guessing so, and you're probably going to have rats and things as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
certain food waste is good, but others, yeah, probably I'd say your meats, bones as you say, alliums, I'm told, aren't good for the compost, such as onions and leeks and things like that.
Yeah,
But
they're not good for a wormery either.
no,
What about fishy stuff? Is it good fish?
apparently fish is quite good from what I've
Guts
heard.
and bones.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
all
because they
really
use fish blood meal, don't they?
Yeah. Bone, crushed bone.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm assuming that, yeah, that's only going to benefit the
So
compost. But
phosphorus and potassium.
I couldn't tell you, to be honest.
Also with the wormery, they reckon eggshells good
Sulfur.
Yeah.
Sulfur.
because it gives you
Right,
grit.
okay. I'm assuming that'd be calcium as well, wouldn't it, from the eggshells?
I don't know. I was just sort of read that it was about the grit or something in it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm not too
But
sure. to be
obviously
honest, but
that's slightly different because you're cultivating the worms
Yeah,
rather
yeah,
than the
yeah.
compost.
well, you could say they're very interlinked, really, because worms are really breaking down the compost as well. We
Yeah.
tend to get our worms from the wormery and then put them into the compost.
You've got a
so they're-
wormery, have you?
Yeah, I'll show you. It's over there in a bit.
Do you sell them?
Yeah, $4.50 for 100 grams. So, which we only bought 100 grams like 2 or 3 years ago, and now we've got enough.
What about juice? Can I buy a little bit of your juice?
We'll discuss it all. But yeah, basically this is the first stage anyway. So it's a mixture of all the garden waste and horse manure and cardboard, etc. Then after a while, when it's all heated up and broken down a little bit, we then flip it over into this bin. So one, it can get some more air into there, and it stops it becoming what they class as anaerobic, I believe, which is where it doesn't get enough oxygen and it starts becoming all stinky.
Mildew.
Yeah, and not good. So we basically flip it to get the oxygen back in there, and then everything that's on the top then goes to the bottom, and the stuff that's rotted down goes to the top. So you're trying to get the even consistency, if that makes sense. So this has probably been in here. We'll probably leave it in here for about 3 weeks, maybe a month, and then we'll flip it into here for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then it will come over to this area where it's almost a finished product. This is still a bit grainy, so to speak, and a bit chunky.
How long does
So-
it take from the starting here and ending up as a finished, ready to
This has probably taken around 6 or 7 months, but that's because it's been over winter. So in the summer, it can heat up like really, really quickly, and to the point where, I mean, a lot of people are using hose pipes and things through the compost heat to be able to have running water, hot running water, and because if you put your hand in there, I don't know whether it's hot now, but yeah, you can put your hand in there and it gets so hot you can't really touch it. So again, that's another permaculture thing where you can pretty much heat your water off the compost heat.
Are you
So,
covered the compost or not?
again, that depends on the conditions, really. If it's really hot, then no, because you try and let some of the moisture evaporate. You don't want it too wet, but then you don't want it completely dry. So it's
It depends on the weather as well.
yeah, that's it. So you're just trying to keep an eye on the balance, really. If you can grab a handful and water drips out when you squeeze it, then that's too wet, but then obviously you can feel when it's too dry. So it needs the water to do the breaking down process. So yeah, this could be a bit looser, so to speak. There's still a lot of organic material in there, but for what we're using it as a mulch on top of the beds, it's perfect, really. If we did want to use it for seedlings and things like that, then we'd put it through a sieve and take all the finer stuff out and then put the chunkier stuff back in somewhere. So So yeah, now we just got to dig it and put it on the beds really. And if you've got any questions, if I can answer them, I most certainly will. But I'd say you want to probably as close to that gap between the wastage gap, if that makes sense. And if you can't make it on a big scale like this, it's still worth doing, because all you've got to do is chuck a handful like this in a watering can, and that's basically fertiliser then as well, so it's called compost tea. So you don't necessarily have to have
This stuff as well, or just that?
just this stuff. This is what we're putting into that in there. Get another barrel Hello, can you come over?
Not bad. It goes on top of the cardboard.
Pretty much, yeah. And then pretty much it, and you just rake it level and
So if someone asks what you're doing on Saturday, you know what to say.
make the bloopers.
Do we need shovels over there?
Shouldn't need to. Maybe take one just to rake it across, really. Have we done it?
That was badly played into it.
Then we turn it on our
Not as much as you think. Possibly, I think. I'll come back round there in November though, and we'll go through it. Have you got that number? Yeah. Really? What do you think it's causing it? Possibly, but not as hard as you think. I know it kind of is disheartening though, isn't it? Anyway.
I haven't got like a bed as such, so everything I've tried to grow has been in pots.
Right, okay.
I don't know whether or not if that's a factor, like they're not, the nutrients aren't there, or I forget to water it,
Yeah,
how,
yeah.
how much I'm meant to water it, or I don't know.
Well, it's again, it's all dependent on which plant it's with. So I think tomatoes are quite good to
Yeah, and
start.
that's the one that I couldn't grow, and I was really disappointed.
When was that? This year or last year?
Oh no, a couple of years ago. It was an actual cherry tomato plant, so I didn't even have to do anything. It was like
Right, okay.
given to me just to nurture, and yeah, it died.
Might have been a lack of water. They do need quite a bit, but they don't like the soil going dry. But no, it's one of those things where it's all experimental. You win some, you lose some kind of thing.
And peppers, I really wanted to grow peppers, because you can grow them like in a pot, can't you?
Yeah, yeah.
But because of my bad experience with the cherry tomatoes, I was like, oh,
No,
I can't
Because then when you do start getting it, it's so rewarding.
Massive allotment. And everybody from school used to go there and
Yeah.
help.
It's not as minging as it sounds. Sounds pretty grim, doesn't it? Yeah, so I was just explaining basically how we make the compost. It's like all the garden waste, leaves and stuff like that. Yeah, that's the first one. So we leave that for maybe a month or so, and then we flip it over into this one so we get some oxygen.
What, the whole lot goes into there?
Yeah.
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 So then the bottom stuff is on the top,
Yeah.
and then it can all try and break it out evenly. So it's this one stuff.
So we'll take this one back.
Yeah, you can do it. That's okay. So then we'll leave it in this one for maybe another 2 or 3 weeks. Again, it depends on the weather, how hot it is, how rainy it is, and stuff like that. But, and then it comes over here to inspire it. And we try and keep it.
So what would you add to that then? Just obviously like your
In there we've
manure
got,
and stuff.
yeah, you don't have to use manure. Grass clippings is really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, you want either straw and grass clippings, cardboard, paper.
But the grass clippings, is it you can't have weeds in it, or you can have weeds in it?
Some say yes.
For instance, if you've got a garden and it's like grassy and weedy, and you can't get a couple of weed clippings and you're just struggling, then that would mean that you could get into the
It depends because it does get very hot. So some of the trees will burn up, but then others won't. So if you've got something about 70 degrees, a lot of those things will burn up and then they'll come out in the compost. But you'll always get a few, if that makes sense. Went to dig. Get your hands dirty.
See why you don't need a gym, don't you?
No, definitely not. I don't need to pay for a gym. People are crazy for doing that. Carry some extra shopping bags or something. For now, anyway. So yeah, I'll wait for them to come back.
Would you add more, or this would be the layout?
Ideally, if it's the first time you're doing it, you want, I'd say about 4 inches, so you want a good size. But then year by year, you shouldn't need to add as much. But yeah, ideally we'd have this a bit thicker and
develop it better. It's easier.
yeah, pretty much. Again, it's one of these things where we leave kind of gaps in between the cardboard, but that's not going to cause a problem because as soon as a bit of grass comes up, it's then going to spread around the whole bed. So the more effort you put into making it right the first time, the less you're going to have to keep going over. So ideally you want to be doing this around autumn time, so as it's coming to the end of the growing season you want to get the bed down so it all starts decomposing and it's
Over the
kind of
winter, that.
yeah, so the frost is going to start decaying it and things like that, so and then by spring the cardboard should be almost broken down and you're able to plant straight into it. But on the other side of that, now that this is laid down, all you've got to do is just punch the holes in the cardboard. So ideally you want the cardboard wet as well, so it's going to be more pliable to go through.
So would you water that?
Yeah, if you water it in it's all going to settle down more, and when the cardboard dries it pops up in places, so you want to try and keep it moist so that it stays level and on the floor basically. But again, if you just wanted to get the bed down and get planting within a day, you just got to plant through the cardboard, and that's going to stop all the weeds from being around it, apart from this section here where you just have to make sure that any bits that are cropping up around the plant are weeded. But effectively, as I say, within a day you can have all your beds laid and your plants in and ready to go without having to dig constantly. And because there's a few, well, here it's just overwhelming. You look and you don't know where to start, and I think as soon as you can get some cardboard and compost down you can see your bed without having to stand hours and end digging and digging and digging.
Realistically, you could do that on your own in an hour, whereas digging it you'd be a couple of hours on its own.
At least, and then you've got to do that probably 2 or 3 times a year, and then you've got to do that every year, and in that process you're ruining the soil, you're ruining the nutrients, it's all very counterproductive really. And again, there's scientific kind of studies now to show that this method of no dig and the regenerative method is producing higher nutrient quality food, healthier plants, which means there's less pests and less variables, they're more drought resistant. So really it is all about the soil.
Carbon release as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, and it's all.
So what does it exactly mean then, no dig? Like you don't disturb the
roots.
The layer of soil at all?
Top layer.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there's I'm still not 100% sure, but when you come to your parsnips and your root crops, obviously you have to dig them out. But I think it's a case of just being as minimal as you can with that. Obviously you're going to leave a hole, but it's less for it to repair itself than if you dig the whole bed up and then it's got to redo itself. So.
And does that preserve the soil itself then? Is that better for the soil itself if you're not digging into it?
Yeah, 100%. And effectively you want to have it covered at all times really with a plant of some sort, and because people use what they call green manures. So if this bed was left empty, they'd put a particular crop on there that they can then just chop at some point, and then that will they'll use that as a mulch and it'll have more nutrients. And as the things for the lettuce, and basically when we're chopping them we'll leave all the roots in, and with most crops we'll leave all the roots in because that's then going to add to the organic matter and keep breaking down and adding to the soil, rather than again ripping it out and breaking all those mycorrhizal fungi. And so it's for me I wouldn't do it any other way now personally. One, for the ease, one, how quick it is just to get the beds going. As long as you maintain them, don't get me wrong, it's not it's not a kind of get or fix it quick issue, if you get what I mean, for weeds, because you're going to get them flying in from places, so it's not going to eradicate them completely, but I'd say 75% of the way there. But yeah, did anyone want to
leave
punch?
it before putting something else in? Or you would?
Say that again, sorry.
Leave it before putting something else in?
Not really.
It's just like grow and then grow again and then grow again.
Again, it depends on what varieties you're using as to what time of year it is, for example. So, but what I would personally do is I'd have a crop in here of, say, carrots or something like that, and then just as they were coming to when they're about a month away or something, I'd then put say onion seeds in the middle. So just as they're starting to grow, these ones are coming out. So you've still got a crop in there.
Yeah.
So it's always kind of full. And then obviously when the onions are nearly done, you get something else in there. And so it's easier said than done. Don't get me wrong, because you've got to have all the timings right. But
Hope good weather.
yeah,
So
that's the biggest thing.
Do
at the
you
moment.
use like a crop rotation? Like you wouldn't just keep growing carrots in one patch, or you would?
It depends, because a lot of people say you don't because of pests and this sort of issue. But again, if the soil's well balanced and you're doing this interplanting where you've got your carrots and then you've got your onions, and it's kind of, you can grow the same crop in there 3, 4, 5 years on a row, as long as you've got something else that's breaking it up. That
Yeah,
makes sense. And as long as
so
the
you
soil's
sort of are
healthy.
rotating it, although minimally.
Effectively.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, the traditional way would be to have your carrots in this bed, and then for the next year they'll be in that bed, and then the next year they'll rotate it that way. Whereas a lot of people now are doing it over a yearly basis, so they are rotating it, and it's not constantly carrots, but they're using the same bed year in, year out for the same crops. And again, that must be down to the soil health rather than the traditional ways of doing it, I guess. But yeah, I always try and keep the beds full as much as possible. One, because it's wasted space otherwise, and two, because again, you want to keep the ground covered as much as possible so that all the nutrients aren't being leached out from the sun. Yeah, don't really know where to go from there, but if you want, we can plant some bits in here, but yeah.
So that's ready to plant on now?
Yeah.
Don't have to do anything else, just plant.
No, just plant through the cardboard, and eventually
Let's plant a couple bits.
I'll go get some kale. Actually, 1 second.